One thing to be very careful of when creating multiple table queries in Access is the cross join or the Cartesian join. If we go to create a new query in design and we're interested in information about sales and countries and then close, these are the two tables that contain the information I'm really after, which is the country name and the sales value. If I then try to view the result, you'll find that we actually get 129,556 records. The reason for that is because I've added these two tables, there is no relationship between them, there's no direct relationship between them without the customers table in the middle. So what Access does is it shows me all the records from the countries table and all the records from the sales table, but for each other. So for example, in the countries table for Australia, I get to see all the sales entries. Then for Canada, I get to see all the sales entries. So you end up with this really quite large amount of data that is not real in any sense. So I can see Australia, if I sort these by country, I can see Australia, and there are a lot of blank records. Then I get to Canada, and there are a lot of blank records, but some data. And then the same for France and Germany. Every single record in the sales table is repeated for every record in the countries table. So if you do add multiple tables to a query in Access, make sure that they join to something. Now these two don't join to each other, but if I add in the customers table, then they are now joined to the customers table and then the customers table to the sales table. And I don't need to add any of the fields from this table to my grid. The relationship then creates the joins, and when I go to view, I see 338 records instead of that massive hundreds of thousands of records. So be very careful when using multiple tables inside an Access query. Now you can actually do the same thing if I remove the sales table by accident. So I've chosen the country name, first name and last name of the customers. When I view, there's my 18,000 records. I can actually delete this relationship here. Now it's a bit like when you change the join type of a relationship in a query. It's a temporary deletion. So I haven't actually deleted the relationship between these two tables. I'm effectively just saying, whilst you run this query, ignore that relationship. Now when I view, because there's no join between the two tables, I get every customer repeated for every country, and suddenly the number of records shoot up again. So instead of 18,000, I see the 129,556. So that's every customer for Australia, every customer for Canada, every customer for France, because there is no join. So I need to then make sure I put that join back in place. Country ID to country region, view, and I'm back to 18,508. Be very careful when using multiple tables that you always have at least one relationship between any table and any one other. Otherwise you will end up with this Cartesian join where the number of records just suddenly goes through the roof. Really, that's good because it's an indicator that something's gone awry, and that something is the fact that you haven't got relationships between the tables in your query.